This is William's speech number 10. Final one. Title of Bill's speech today is inspire. The project is to inspire your audience. Good morning. If you are joining us for this information session this morning, then in just 16 weeks, you will be attempting your first triathlon. Congratulations. We've got a lot of great information for you today. But first, I'm going to invite Bill Mcnamara up to the lectern to spend about 8 to 10 minutes sharing some reflections on the first time that he sat where you now sit in his speech titled, You've Got to Try.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you to Brian James for that introduction. Well, I'm excited to see so many triathletes in this room. Just by a show of hands, how many people have done a triathlon before? Excellent. We've got more than I thought, but a sea of newbies as well. In your faces, I see excitement. And I see a little bit of fear. And that's all right. I remember that. If I close my eyes, I can still hear the water lapping on the sand, and I can feel the grayness of the day, and I can hear the nervous chatter of the other triathletes around me. But most of all, I can feel the fear inside of me, underneath my wetsuit, like a living thing trying to get out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My triathlon story started about 9 months earlier, in September, on another beach. My two brothers were participating, and I was there to cheer them on, standing on the pre-dawn beach with a sweatshirt and said good luck to them. And I stepped back among the spectators, and the gun went off, and they went charging into the surf, and I watched them swim a long, lazy circle, come running out and grab their bicycles and go tearing off to somewhere in the city we were in. A short while later come back and drop their bikes, put their sneakers on, and go running off to finish up their triathlon. And then as they cross the finish line, full of exhaustion, they stand around and pat each other on the back and say, "Did you see that pothole at the bottom of that first hill?" "Oh, did I? I went right through it. I thought I was going to crash. And by the way, there was a dog chasing me on the road part." That they share their war stories. And you can only stand around those sort of things for so long before these questions start creeping into your head, which I'm sure you've all experienced, saying, "You know what, I could probably do this." And flushed with exuberation, I went home and I told my wife, "I'm going to do a triathlon." And she said, "Oh yeah?" And I said, "Yeah." And I knew they were planning on doing one in June, so I slapped my money onto the computer and boldly signed up. Now, there were only 3 problems as I could see them. The first is that I absolutely hated to run. All my life, I've hated to run. The second is I didn't own a bicycle. And the third is I didn't know how to swim. Now, let me clarify. When I say I didn't know how to swim, I've grown up around the ocean. But my experiences in the water always had a ground where you could stand up. I was diving under waves and swim back and forth. If I fell into a deep pool, I could make it to the side just fine. But propelling yourself in an orderly sort of fashion through a great distance was not something I had ever tried before. So I took to rectifying those problems. I bought a bike, I grudgingly started to run, and I signed up with the American Red Cross to take some swim lessons, which consist of hanging on the side of the pool and kicking your feet until you can't walk anymore. It's the exuberance that drove me to sign up quickly falls off. And then you're looking at a lot of weeks on a training schedule that I tack to the wall. That's a lot of mornings of getting up when you don't want to. a lot of times go in a pool when it's cold outside. And I've always enjoyed bicycling, but when the choice is between watching a spring baseball game on TV or going out to ride for 2 hours, it's hard. It's not easy to keep yourself going. But the thing that kept me going was I was afraid. Right? I had put my money down, but inside of me I was afraid. You can get really hurt doing something like this. And if you have any doubts, you can go on the internet and find a parade of horrible things that could happen to you. There are triathletes who have a heart attack and drown, or who, hit a pothole wrong and then slide 100 feet on the asphalt, or just collapse from heat frustration into a pile on the run. And there are some people who just drown. Just drown. This is what really scared me. The overriding advice on the internet seemed to show one thing. Under no circumstance should you try to take off your wetsuit during the swim. Which that didn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, why would you? Those things are not so easy to get on or off. Plus, aren't we supposed to be, swimming on the swim? Who's changing their clothes? So I said, thank you very much, Internet, for that jewel of advice. But it was pretty reassuring. Basically, there are people out there to help you along the way, and as long as you don't take off your wetsuit, you're probably going to be just fine. And as the weeks turned into months, I could see myself getting better at things. The runs started coming a little easier, and the rides were getting better. And I got up to swimming half a mile in the pool, and then going beyond that. And I started saying, you know what, I think I can do this. I think this is going to be just fine. And then the night before the race came, and I was scared. And I got, spits and spurts of sleep. And early the next morning, I found myself on that beach with the rocky sand that was cold and wet and a gray morning, wearing a pastel blue swim cap with all the other blue Easter eggs around me in my wave. And there was real fear inside of me. But I said to myself, listen, you did your training, you are set, you've done everything you needed to do, you just got to get through. And I only had 2 goals for myself for this race. Goal number 1, which I put on my wall, was don't die. Assuming I could accomplish goal number 1, goal number 2 was finish the race. So not exactly lofty goals. I wasn't trying to come in first or anything like that. Just make it through. And I stood there, and the announcer said, triathletes, take your positions. And people stepped into the water, and it was cold. And the gun went off, and everybody ran into the surf, and I hit the water, and I started swimming like crazy. And like I said, I was pretty prepared, I thought. I had been swimming in the pool well over half a mile. I wasn't prepared for the jostling and the kicking and the arms hitting you. I also wasn't prepared for the fact that the beautiful stripe down the pool lane wasn't there anymore. It was brownish green, and you couldn't really see farther than this in front of you. I wasn't prepared for the fact that when you turned to breathe, a wave would hit you in the face. And I wasn't prepared for going out way too fast and then being unable to catch my breath. And I flipped over on my back to try to get my breathing under control, but I was breathing like this. And I was flailing, and voices in my head were screaming, "You're exhausting yourself! Stop it!" And I couldn't get my breathing under control, because every time I tried to, a wave would crash over my head. And I said, you gotta stop, go back. And I looked up, and the start of the race was impossibly far back. And the last wave of the day was starting. They were running into the water, coming right at me. So I turned around and looked that way, and the finish was impossibly far away. And I didn't know what to do. All I knew was I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe. I think the wetsuit was too tight. I had to take it off. And a little voice in the back of my head said, if you take off the wetsuit, you're going to drown. And I said, I don't know what to do. I can't put my face in the water because I can't breathe. And the Red Cross didn't teach me anything but one stroke. That's the freestyle, the front call, and you got to put your face in the water. I didn't really have any options. I mean, I did have options. There are kayakers there, and if you're in trouble, you can flag them down. And they will unceremoniously hoist you over the front of a kayak and row you into shore with your rear pointing to the sky. And that's an option. But I had spent too many days getting up. Going to swim when I didn't want to, and running maybe it was pride, maybe you want to call it determination if you're being generous, but I didn't want to go finish my day like that. I didn't want to DNF. That's called do not finish. So I reached down as deep as I could and I said, just keep going. And I swam, side stroke and backstroke in any other sort of way I could try to get myself to shore. And I finally did. And I crawled out of the water, and I went to the transition space where they told me it was going to be a trouble because people are disoriented. It's hard to find your bike. Well, when your bike is the only one there, it is not so hard. See, it's silver lining. Well, I found my bike, and I sat down, and I said, I can't believe I have to ride and then run now. To be honest, my language was much more colorful than that. But I was speaking to myself, and I was having a rough day. But I got on the bike, and I gutted through that, and then I got my sneakers on, and I gutted through a 5-mile run. And I dragged myself across the finish line. And there were slaps on the back, and people were cheering for me. And hey, how was the swim? And I said, awful. It was awful. It was the hardest thing I've ever done physically. Something that I thought I was prepared for, but I was completely not prepared for. But I finished. And I am so proud of that. So proud of that. So to all of you, do your training. You're gonna encounter difficulties. You're gonna encounter something in your first triathlon that you were not prepared for at all. You've gotta reach down in yourself. You have everything you need to just keep going. And under no circumstances should you ever take off your wetsuit during the swim.
Great speech, Bill. I don't know, I think you might have scared me and